I will never forget the hush that fell over the room the moment my sister turned on me, her voice trembling not with joy but with cold, cutting fury. We stood on opposite ends of the dance floor, the wedding music still spinning around us in dizzying circles, guests staring in disbelief. This was meant to be a day of celebration. White roses draped over pews, laughter echoing beneath fairy-lit arches, and the smell of promise lingering in every corner. Yet with one brutal accusation, my sister shattered our family's fragile harmony. And then, in the middle of that stunned silence, the groom spoke, revealing a secret so devastating it changed all our lives forever. A fragile bond. My sister Hannah and I grew up in a modest home nestled on the edge of town. She was the older sibling, beautiful, confident, the kind of person who glowed in any crowd. By comparison, I was quieter, happier to tinker with my gadgets or lose myself in sketchbooks. We loved each other deeply, but as the years passed, a subtle tension took root. She chased perfection like a prize, fueling her insecurities with relentless ambition. I watched, half admiring, half worried, wishing she could see herself as good enough without external validation. Our mother worked 2 jobs after our father left. With Hannah's help, the household functioned, albeit barely. She kept a tight rein on our finances and insisted we always present our best face to the world. "Appearances matter," she would say, smoothing my hair when I was a teenager. "People judge you by how put together you look." The result was that Hannah blossomed under the weight of these expectations, shaping herself into the girl who always got top marks, earned the lead in the school play, and wore flawless outfits every day. I, on the other hand, retreated, preferring t-shirts and jeans to whatever the latest fashion was. Our mother often sighed at me, exasperated, but Hannah took it upon herself to be the shining star. When she met Oliver in college, I was thrilled. He seemed gentle, intelligent, an old soul, really. They dated through all the typical ups and downs, but by the time Hannah called me, breathless and giggling, to say he'd proposed, I believed wholeheartedly that he was the perfect partner for her. They announced their engagement with grand excitement. That night, I remember hugging Hannah and thinking, she's finally found her safe place. I was proud. However, a small part of me also braced for the inevitable storm of wedding planning that would test her need for absolute perfection. As the months passed, Hannah plunged into orchestrating the biggest wedding our town had ever seen. She wanted an outdoor ceremony in a centuries-old orchard, followed by a lavish reception in the newly renovated estate on the hill. She agonized over every detail, the floral arrangements, the color of the table linens, the handcrafted party favors, the seating chart that accounted for feuding relatives. I helped as best I could, but my sister's demands were colossal. Still, I told myself, she's stressed but excited. She loves him. She loves me. She wouldn't do anything to hurt me. Preparations and growing tensions. I first noticed cracks in our relationship a week before the wedding. Hannah was reorganizing her bridesmaids, complaining that one friend was too busy to commit to a final dress fitting. She huffed and told me, "No one cares as much as I do. I want everything perfect, yet everyone's letting me down." I tried to reassure her. "It's just a dress fitting, Hannah. You'll look radiant no matter what they wear." But she bristled, eyeing me like I didn't understand. Maybe I didn't. I'd never craved the spotlight the way she did. Oliver, meanwhile, flitted around quietly. If Hannah was the queen bee, Oliver was the calm presence trying to keep her from spinning out of control. He'd call me sometimes, remarking how she'd woken in a panic about the dessert menu or the lighting scheme. "It's just a wedding," he'd say softly, "but to her, it's so much more. She wants it to be perfect for everyone." I recognized that in her, the deep fear that anything less than flawless would reflect poorly on her. It felt like an old ghost from childhood, resurrected by the high stakes of a wedding. Yet, I never suspected that her insecurities would push her to betray me in the most public way imaginable. On the morning of the wedding, I rose early, drove to the orchard, and felt my breath catch at the sight. The lush green trees, the gentle hum of bees among blossoms, and the crisp white chairs lined in neat rows, it was pure magic. A small altar stood at the orchard's edge, draped in pale lilac fabric, matching the bridesmaids' dresses. Soft sunlight filtered through overhead branches, casting dappled shadows on the grass. Hannah was in the orchard's cottage, dressing with her bridesmaids. I caught a glimpse of her in her wedding gown, an elegant lace creation with a flowing train. She looked breathtaking, but her eyes were ringed with tension. My mother fussed over her hair, repinning a fallen curl. "Relax," I murmured, stepping in to greet her. "Today's your day. She gave me a pinched smile. Yes. Yes, it is. We embraced, though I felt the stiffness in her posture. I brushed it aside, wedding nerves, and wandered back outside to greet incoming guests. My mind buzzed with excitement. Oliver was going to be my brother-in-law soon. There was no reason to fear anything else. The ceremony, a moment of bliss. To my great relief, the ceremony went off without a hitch. Hannah glided down the aisle, arm linked with our mother. The soft melody of a string quartet drifted through the orchard. Oliver waited at the altar, eyes shining with adoration. Behind him stood his groomsmen, looking proud and expectant. I took my place in the front row, tears stinging my eyes at the pure joy on Hannah's face. In that precious half hour, everything seemed perfect. The officiant led them through heartfelt vows, talk of unity and companionship. I glimpsed Oliver's hand trembling around Hannah's, and I realized just how deeply he loved her. The orchard fell silent as they exchanged rings. Then, with a triumphant declaration, the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, and Oliver leaned in for the kiss. Applause erupted. The orchard felt alive with happiness, petals drifting down from the ancient branches overhead. We all migrated to the estate for the reception, a swirl of pastel decor and crystal chandeliers. Laughter and the clink of champagne glasses filled the air. There was a sense of relief. We made it through the hard part, now we can celebrate. I never saw the betrayal coming. During cocktail hour, I found Hannah alone near a side table, fiddling with her bouquet. Guests mingled around, nibbling canapés, but she stared off into the distance, brow furrowed. Everything okay? I asked softly. She startled, then forced a bright smile. Just perfect, she said. Go enjoy yourself. I opened my mouth to say more, but she turned away, busying herself with a conversation involving the DJ. Something about her posture made my stomach twist. She was anxious, but about what? Soon, the hall beckoned us for dinner. The estate's grand dining room gleamed, long tables draped in linen, centerpieces bursting with seasonal flowers, tall windows showcasing the orchard. I sat with a group of friends, chatting about how splendid the ceremony was. My mother and Hannah's father-in-law gave short, sweet toasts. The best man told a funny anecdote about Oliver's college antics. Then came the time for the bride and groom to offer their thanks. Oliver took the microphone first. His voice was warm, gratitude oozing from every word. He thanked his parents for teaching him about love, thanked Hannah for choosing him, and singled me out for being the sister who always supported Hannah from day one. I blushed, touched by the acknowledgement. Then he passed the mic to Hannah. She stood, radiating elegance in her gown. A hush fell over the room. Thank you all for coming, she began, voice smooth. I'm honored you're here to celebrate this day with Oliver and me. We've put so much into making this wedding everything we dreamed. She paused, smiling at him, then scanning the crowd. I want to raise a toast to my husband, Oliver. You are the kindest, most patient man I know. Thank you for loving me unconditionally. Applause rippled. She nodded in acknowledgement. But, she continued, there's something else I need to say. Her expression clouded. A strange hush settled among the guests, like a collective intake of breath. Hannah's eyes flicked to me, and for an instant, I felt a jolt of alarm. Her stare was intense, almost resentful. Why? Her voice wavered. I have discovered something that saddens me, something about my own sister. How do I put this? She pressed her lips together, forging an air of heartbreak. Let's just say I learned she's been deceiving me, deceiving all of us. My stomach plummeted. What on earth was she talking about? Murmurs rippled through the guests. My cheeks blazed as all eyes swung to me. I felt pinned to my seat, heart pounding. Hannah cleared her throat. I never imagined I'd have to address it here on my wedding day, but since the truth came out only last night, I can't keep silent. My sister, she paused dramatically, glancing around. My sister has been seeing Oliver behind my back. A collective gasp. The words struck me like a physical blow. My breath left my lungs, and I froze. No. I blurted, half rising from my chair. That's not true. Gasps erupted across the hall. Guests exchanged baffled looks, some covering their mouths. My mother's face blanched with shock. The orchard stillness outside contrasted sharply with the electric tension inside. Even Oliver, seated at the head table, looked stunned. Hannah's eyes glistened with tears, though they seemed fueled by anger as much as sorrow. She claims innocence, she said, voice trembling. But I found messages on Oliver's phone. They were affectionate, inappropriate. My sister has been trying to steal my fiancé, my husband now, behind my back. And I only realized it last night. A wave of horror coursed through me. I had never sent Oliver any messages like that. We occasionally texted about wedding errands, sure, but never anything romantic. Yet Hannah was standing there, publicly accusing me of the worst betrayal I could imagine. Whispers spread like wildfire. I caught glimpses of people gawking, leaning toward each other with questions and speculation. I tried to speak, but my voice died in my throat, tears burning in my eyes. Hannah, I swear, I don't know what you're talking about. She brandished her phone. I recognized your phone number. There are incriminating texts. Oliver claims they're meaningless, but come on, who calls someone my sweetheart or my muse if it's meaningless? Her voice broke, tears slipping down. I can't believe you do this to me. My own sister. I felt the room spinning. My father shouted, enough. We should discuss this privately. But Hannah, fueled by a sense of public retribution, refused to relent. No, let everyone know, she insisted, voice quavering. I won't hide the shame. I want them to see who she really is. Tears streamed down my face. I looked at Oliver in desperation. Was there any truth to these alleged texts? Oliver stared at me, his expression pinched with guilt, but also confusion. The entire hall seemed perched on a knife's edge, waiting for the next bombshell. The groom's revelation. Then Oliver stood, stepping behind Hannah, gently prying the microphone from her trembling hand. She let him take it, though she glared at me with open hurt. Oliver faced the crowd, voice thick with emotion. Please. I need to clear this up, he said. Yes, I have texts on my phone that might seem suspicious, but they're not from her. He turned to Hannah, eyes raw. I've kept a secret from you from everyone, for far too long. My father insisted on it, out of shame. But I see now how it's destroying us. I can't let you accuse your sister unfairly. The hush deepened. Even Hannah looked uncertain. He ran a hand through his hair, trembling. Those messages, my sweetheart, my muse, they're from someone else entirely. Another woman I've known for years. A woman I was seeing before I proposed. And I've been seeing her, off and on, even after you and I got engaged. He swallowed, tears gathering in his eyes. The crowd erupted in shocked exclamations, cut off quickly as Oliver pressed on. Hannah, I'm sorry. I didn't want to lose you. My father told me to keep it quiet, that I should marry you because you're from a respectable family, that this other relationship would ruin everything. But I never severed ties, and she texted me last night, praising me for going through with the wedding. She even used a different phone number. I guess you recognized the area code as your sister's and assumed the worst. It felt like time froze. Hannah's mouth opened, stunned. I stared at Oliver, reeling. He had another lover? The swirl of heartbreak in my chest threatened to consume me. My sister had targeted me, but in truth, Oliver was the one deceiving her. Hannah paled, stepping back from Oliver. No, she whispered, voice trembling. No, that can't be true. I saw her phone number. It ended in 9032. That's my sister's number. Oliver shook his head sadly. Your sister's number ends in 9033. You looked quickly, got confused. Or maybe my father, someone else, manipulated the contact list. I don't know. But the texts aren't from her. They're from... I can't keep lying about it. They're from my ex, Amelia. A ripple of confusion washed over the guests. I felt faint. The tension in the room soared. My mother grasped the arms of her chair, tears on her cheeks. Hannah stared at Oliver in horror. You, someone else? Then why marry me? Oliver closed his eyes in anguish. Because I do love you. But I also had ties I never broke. I thought I could quietly bury them, but last night she texted me, praising me for finally settling down, like she wasn't gone from my life. When you found my phone, you must have seen those messages. You assumed it was your sister's number. You never confronted her directly. If you had, this tragedy might have been avoided. Hannah looked at me, tears flooding her eyes. Her voice trembled. So it wasn't you, she whispered, gaze swirling with heartbreak and regret. I just shook my head, tears streaming. No, I managed. I had nothing to do with any of this. Consequences and collapse. Pandemonium erupted. Guests chattered in shock, and some slipped out, unwilling to watch the family meltdown. Hannah let out a raw sob, shoulders shaking as she grasped the reality of Oliver's confession. He had chosen her for a stable marriage while still harboring a connection to another woman. Her finger tapped the ring on her hand, eyes wide with despair. I found the courage to speak. "Hannah," I said softly, stepping forward. "You accused me without asking. You humiliated me in front of everyone. But I'm so sorry you're in pain." She let out a strangled sound, half laugh, half sob. "I can't believe I did that to you. I was so certain. I was so paranoid that you, of all people, would overshadow me. I never questioned it. I'm so sorry." She reached out, but I hesitated, a swirl of anger and empathy in my chest. Eventually, I let her fingers brush mine, a fragile gesture of sorrow. Oliver, tears streaking his face, tried to move closer to Hannah. "I know I failed you," he said. "I wanted this wedding. I wanted you. But I was a coward. My father's expectations, my own confusion. I let them dictate everything." Hannah's entire body trembled. "I hate you," she whispered, voice thick with heartbreak. "I can't stand to look at you right now." She wrenched her hand away from me and fled the hall, the train of her gown trailing behind. Our mother hurried after her, calling her name. Oliver stood, eyes squeezed shut, fists clenched, before stumbling out in the opposite direction. The guests parted like a wave around him. In the wake of their departure, a suffocating hush settled. I remained, tears drying on my cheeks, heart pounding with a riot of emotions. Some relatives approached, offering timid condolences. A few launched into hushed gossip about Oliver's other woman. My father placed a gentle hand on my shoulder, face etched with sorrow. "Come on," he whispered. "We should go. This is no place to remain." Aftermath: a splintered family. The days following that wedding were a blur of shock and heartbreak. Hannah refused to see Oliver, and rumors spread of a potential annulment. She also avoided me, half out of guilt, half out of devastation that her life had blown up in one afternoon. Our mother told me Hannah sobbed for hours, occasionally raging that everything she'd built was a lie. "I called Evie a traitor," she told our mother, when all along Oliver was the real betrayer. I too wrestled with complicated feelings, resentment for how Hannah publicly scapegoated me, pity for her sorrow, and lingering confusion about Oliver. Had he ever truly loved her, or was it just a marriage of convenience, forced by family pressure? I wanted to hate him for wrecking my sister's dream, but I also sensed his own torment in that orchard. It was a tragic collision of secrets, fear, and an unrelenting pursuit of an illusion of perfection. Our mother tried to mediate, urging Hannah to speak to me. "You owe her a real apology," she told my sister. "You can't just hide away." But Hannah snapped that she wasn't ready. Weeks slipped by. The orchard blossomed into late spring, mocking the idea of new beginnings. Our family gatherings turned tense. We tiptoed around the wedding fiasco like it was a gaping wound we had no idea how to stitch. Oliver made attempts to contact Hannah, sending her letters and leaving tearful voicemails apologizing, begging for a chance to salvage their bond. She ignored them. She filed for separation, intending to annul the marriage. A swirl of legal confusion followed, money spent on a wedding that ended before the honeymoon began. The entire town buzzed with the scandal, whispering about the bride who called her sister a traitor but discovered her groom had a secret mistress. A chance at reconciliation. One evening, a month after the disastrous wedding, I answered a knock at my apartment door. Hannah stood outside, eyes hollow with exhaustion, mascara smudged. My breath caught. We hadn't talked face to face since that day. Tentatively, I let her in. She slid onto my sofa, shoulders slumped. We sat in silence for a moment, the hum of the fridge punctuating the stillness. Finally, she spoke, voice raw. "I'm sorry. No words can fix what I did. I humiliated you, believed the worst, never gave you a chance. And now, I feel like I can't even show my face in public. I wasted everyone's time, money, hopes, for a marriage built on lies." Tears welled in my eyes. "You were in pain. You made a terrible assumption, but I get it. You saw those texts and panicked." My voice quivered. "I just wish you'd come to me first." She nodded, tears dripping onto her lap. "I should have. I was so obsessed with controlling every detail, so afraid of losing Oliver's love, that I lashed out. A shaky exhale. And Oliver, he's actually in love with someone else. He's been lying to me, to us all. I was a fool. I placed a hand on hers, gently. You're not a fool. You just wanted what everyone wants, to be truly loved. He was the one who betrayed that trust. None of this is your fault, aside from the part where you publicly blamed me. I tried a small smile to soften the jab. Hannah let out a bitter laugh. I guess we share that blame in some twisted way. I blamed you, he blamed his father, you got caught in the crossfire. Our entire family's humiliated, but I miss you, Evie. I can't fix Oliver, but maybe I can fix our bond. My chest tightened. A wave of affection and relief mingled with a swirl of hurt. I miss you too, I whispered. But it'll take time to heal from what happened. She nodded. I know. I'm willing to do what it takes. We spent hours talking, late into the night. She recounted how Oliver's father pushed for the wedding, wanting to link two families of decent social standing. Oliver apparently once had a fling with an old flame, Amelia, who lingered in the background. Fearful of losing his father's support, Oliver pressed on, hoping the fling would fade away. But it didn't. In a cruel twist, that last-minute text to Oliver triggered everything. The heartbreak was immeasurable, for me, for Hannah, for Oliver's illusions of a stable marriage. But at least Hannah and I began to pick up the pieces of our sisterhood. A few days later, Oliver visited me unannounced. I opened my door to see him standing there, looking gaunt, as though he hadn't slept in weeks. I hesitated, not sure if I should let him in. Then I recalled how he'd once been kind and gentle before everything spiraled, so I stepped aside. He sank onto my chair, eyes hollow. I know I'm probably the last person you want to see, but I need to talk to you. I can't get hold of Hannah. She's blocked my number. She won't answer my emails. He rubbed his face. I need to apologize to you too. I used your sister's phone number confusion as an excuse to reveal my secret, when in truth I should have done so earlier, privately, honestly. Instead, I let her direct her rage at you. I crossed my arms, trying to steady the tremor in my hands. It was humiliating. For both of us. You must have known she'd jump to the worst conclusion if she found those texts. He nodded miserably. I was a coward. I thought maybe I could bury everything. Then your sister unleashed that accusation, and I snapped. Some twisted sense of guilt made me declare the truth to everyone. He swallowed. I understand if you both never forgive me. But please, if you can, tell Hannah I want to speak with her. I owe her an apology, face to face. I studied Oliver. He wore the same formal suit jacket I'd seen on the wedding day, though now it was rumpled, as if he hadn't changed for days. The mention of Amelia haunted the air. He tried to juggle two relationships, ended up hurting everyone. My compassion warred with anger. Could I convey his message to Hannah? After a long silence I said, I'll tell her, but I can't promise she'll talk to you. She's hurting. She's furious. She's also humiliated that she accused me wrongly. Oliver nodded. That's fair. Thank you. He rose, shuffling to the door. I hope in time, you can find happiness, Evie. You and Hannah deserve better. He left, leaving a swirl of regret behind him. A second revelation. Later that week, Hannah confided in me that she'd met with Oliver briefly. He apologized profusely, explaining the entire saga with Amelia, how their affair predated the engagement, how he tried to end it but never fully severed ties. He insisted he had real love for Hannah, that the wedding day meltdown was the last straw that forced him to come clean. Through tears, Hannah told me, he begged for forgiveness, even said he'd cut off all contact with Amelia if I'd let him prove himself. I told him I needed time to think. I can't just flip a switch. A part of me thought, no, you deserve better. But I also recognized that love is messy, that she might want to salvage something with Oliver. I support whatever decision you make, I told her softly, mindful of my own lingering hurt from the fiasco. Just be sure it's right for you. A fortnight later, Hannah made her decision. She filed for an annulment. She told me that while she still harbored feelings for Oliver, she couldn't remain married under such deceit. She also recognized that their marriage was rushed, overshadowed by family pressures, illusions of perfection, and unresolved baggage from his side. Oliver wept, tried to persuade her otherwise, but she stood firm. They parted ways, heartbreak etched in both their eyes. Healing the wound. With the annulment moving forward, Hannah turned her attention to mending our fractured bond. We spent more time together, cooking dinners, watching old sitcoms that once made us laugh as kids. She confessed her regrets about the wedding day. I was so fixated on controlling everything that I lost sight of real happiness. I let paranoia and bitterness warp my love for you. We'd cry together, hold each other in trembling embraces. Sometimes she'd exclaim, "I can't believe I was so cruel to you in front of everyone." And I'd reassure her that while I still felt the sting, I forgave her. Our mother, relieved to see us reconciling, often joined these dinners. The three of us tried to reclaim a sense of family after that catastrophic event. Oliver eventually moved back to his parents' home in a neighboring state. Word reached us that Amelia had parted ways with him too, unwilling to be his hidden lover any longer. He was left alone to grapple with the consequences of his indecision. Once he sent me a letter apologizing again, saying he hoped I'd find it in my heart to see him not as a villain but as a flawed man who loved two people poorly. I tossed it in a drawer, uncertain how to respond. My empathy warred with a memory of Hannah's tear-stained cheeks. The orchard blossomed a final time that season, petals drifting away as summer's heat set in. The estate on the hill presumably moved on to the next wedding. Our circle of acquaintances tried to stifle the gossip, but the story lingered. People whispered about the bride who publicly accused her sister, and the groom who had a secret girlfriend. It was humiliating, yes, but with time, new scandals emerged, and the town's fascination waned. A glimmer of a new chapter. 6 months passed. Hannah, free from the shackles of a tumultuous marriage, decided to move to the city for a fresh start. She landed a job in event planning, ironically using her wedding fiasco as a cautionary tale for prospective clients. "Don't let your insecurities rule you," she joked wryly. "Trust me, it never ends well." As for me, I continued with my quiet life, working at my engineering job, occasionally painting in my spare time, forging deeper connections with friends who'd stood by me. I discovered a newfound confidence, ironically sparked by surviving that public humiliation. I realized I could endure rumors and still stand tall, because the truth had come out. I was innocent of betrayal, and even though the path to justice was painful, it liberated me from any illusions that external perfection equaled happiness. When Hannah visited one weekend, we strolled through a local park, warm sun on our backs. She looked healthier, happier. "I needed to let go of Oliver," she told me, eyes scanning the pond where ducks paddled. "He tried reaching out again, but I just can't. The trust is gone." I squeezed her arm gently. "Then you're doing what's right for you." She inhaled the crisp air. "You know," she said, voice soft, "losing that perfect wedding dream was devastating. But maybe I needed that wake-up call. Perfection is a mirage. Real love can't be forced into a neat script. I'm learning to love myself without chasing that unattainable standard." I smiled. "And I'm learning that I can survive even your worst meltdown," I teased, bumping her shoulder. She let out a rueful laugh. "Never again, I promise." Looking back, it's impossible to overstate how drastically the groom's revelation changed our lives. In one explosive moment, Oliver torched the illusions Hannah had so carefully constructed. She thought the biggest threat was me, her own sister, someone unassuming, overshadowed by her brilliance. But in reality, the real threat lay in Oliver's hidden entanglements and Hannah's own crippling fear of imperfection. For me, the heartbreak taught me the value of transparency. If Hannah had simply confronted me about the suspicious texts, we might have avoided the entire meltdown. If Oliver had admitted his secret earlier, perhaps the wedding never would have taken place under false pretenses. The messy truth is that we all contributed to a tapestry of deception and assumptions. And once it unraveled, painful though it was, it set us on a path to authenticity. Hannah's betrayal stung deeply in the moment, but in the end, it was overshadowed by Oliver's admission of loving someone else. That single truth changed Hannah from a bride living in denial to a woman forced to face the cracks in her relationship. It shattered me from a quiet bystander to someone forced to stand up for my own innocence. And ironically, it freed us from illusions that we could perfectly manage love and life. We now share a stronger bond, one forged in the fires of that wedding fiasco. Hannah learned to trust my loyalty, to see me not as a threat but as a friend who stands by her side through storms. I realized that, even when publicly condemned, the truth can emerge if you hold your ground. Together, we navigated a heartbreak that might have destroyed us, but instead forced us to grow. Epilogue: a quiet resolution. A year after the ill-fated wedding, Hannah, my mother, and I revisited the orchard. Not for another wedding, but for a simple picnic under the same ancient branches that once showered blossoms during the ceremony. We spread blankets, shared homemade sandwiches, and breathed in the gentle summer breeze. The orchard caretaker recognized us, gave a polite nod, and left us to our memories. Hannah picked at the grass, a slight smile on her lips. Funny how different it looks now, she mused. Last year, it was decorated in ribbons, full of people. Now it's just quiet. I watched the sunlight dance across her face. Quiet can be good, I replied. No illusions to maintain. No frantic pursuit of perfection. She gave me a grateful look. Yes. No illusions. Just us. A flutter of emotion passed through her eyes. I'm sorry again for what I did. For not trusting you. I reached over and squeezed her hand. We've come so far. I forgive you. The orchard rustled, leaves dancing overhead. I closed my eyes, letting the warmth of the day soothe old wounds. My mother joined us, holding a small camera. Shall we take a picture? She asked, trying for cheer. We nodded, standing together under the orchard's arching limbs. She snapped a shot, the two sisters, arms entwined, the orchard behind us. Later, examining the photo, I saw contentment in our smiles, a testament that heartbreak doesn't have the last word. We parted ways soon after, each returning to our new normal. But that orchard remains in my mind as a symbol, a place where illusions were built and destroyed in the span of hours, a place where a groom's shocking words led to heartbreak but also to truth. The wedding that should have been a perfect memory became instead a watershed moment, painful, raw, yet oddly transformative. Even now, if I pass that orchard, I'll pause by the gate and recall the swirl of candlelit tables, the rustle of Hannah's gown, the hush before Oliver spoke. I'll remember the betrayal that stung like a whip, but I'll also remember how that revelation jolted us out of a shared fantasy and into a deeper, if messy, reality. A reality where sisters can love each other through accusations, heartbreak, and beyond, forging a bond that no wedding meltdown can ultimately destroy. And in that sense, I suppose, the groom's confession did indeed change our lives forever. Through tears and turmoil, it set us free.